Breaking news that won't make headlines. The Baltic countdown has begun. In the last 48 hours, military analysts have detected an alarming pattern, one that mirrors events we've seen before: catastrophic shifts in global politics. Think the Baltic region is just another quiet corner of Europe? Think again. What's unfolding there right now is a rehearsal for something much bigger. And the most disturbing part? The major media networks are completely silent about it. Let me be clear. This isn't about military exercises anymore. What we're seeing is a carefully orchestrated preparation for a massive geopolitical shift. The signs are everywhere, but they're being deliberately hidden from public view. Here's what should really worry you. Western strategists aren't just playing war games. They're setting up expendable pawns. And if you're wondering who these pawns are, look no further than the Baltic states themselves. The most chilling detail emerged just yesterday. Russian intelligence reports indicate that certain Western powers have already drafted contingency plans. Not for defense, for provocation. They're literally preparing to sacrifice entire nations in their geopolitical chess game. But here's the twist that nobody's talking about. The Finnish Gulf situation isn't just about maritime law. It's about testing Russia's red lines. And when those lines are crossed, the response won't be diplomatic notes. The evidence is mounting. Military experts have identified at least 3 major indicators that suggest we're entering a new phase of confrontation. Each one more concerning than the last. What's really happening in Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania? The official narrative crumbles when you look at the facts. These countries aren't being protected. They're being prepared for something far more sinister. The real question isn't if this will escalate, it's when. And more importantly, who stands to profit from turning the Baltic Sea into a flashpoint for global conflict? Before we dive deeper into this analysis, write in the comments where you're watching from. Especially if you're in the Baltic region. Your perspective might be crucial for understanding the full picture. Remember, what's happening now isn't random. It's a calculated move in a much larger game. And in the next segment, I'll show you exactly how deep this rabbit hole goes. Let's zoom out and see the bigger picture unfolding before our eyes. The Baltic Sea has become a pressure cooker of global tensions, with NATO's expansion fundamentally altering the strategic balance. Finland's recent NATO membership and Sweden's imminent accession have effectively transformed this vital waterway into an alliance-controlled zone. But here's what the mainstream media won't tell you. This isn't just about military positioning. We're witnessing a calculated campaign of escalation. First comes the media bombardment, painting Russia as an imminent threat. Then political rhetoric heats up, moving from vague accusations to direct calls for confrontation. Finally, when the crisis peaks, citizens are told their personal sacrifices are necessary to defend democracy. The irony? Those beating the war drums loudest are rarely the ones heading to the front lines. It's always ordinary citizens who bear the heaviest burden. Look at Kaliningrad, Russia's strategic outpost in the Baltic. Western politicians are now openly discussing, reviewing its status, a diplomatic euphemism that masks dangerous intentions. For Russia, this isn't just about military strategy. It's about sovereignty and national security. Any attempt to isolate or blockade Kaliningrad would cross a red line that demands an immediate response. Moscow has been crystal clear. Attempts to restrict navigation in the Gulf of Finland or isolate Russian territories will be met with decisive action. The deployment of additional air defense systems and anti-ship capabilities is already underway. But here's the crucial point. Once this escalation machine starts running, it becomes nearly impossible to stop. We're seeing signs of preparation for various scenarios, from limited military actions to comprehensive regional realignment. The question isn't if something will happen, but when and how. And while politicians play their strategic games, ordinary people across Europe are already feeling the effects. But what's truly alarming is what's happening behind closed doors in Brussels and Washington. Our sources indicate a series of secret meetings that could dramatically accelerate this confrontation. The situation in the Baltic region has reached a critical point, with Russia maintaining several response options. Military reinforcement could include immediate strengthening of forces in Kaliningrad, deploying additional missile systems and air defense. The asymmetric measures arsenal contains options like restricting transit through Lithuania or conducting demonstrative exercises with hypersonic weapons. Looking at the Suwalki corridor, a narrow 100-kilometer strip between Poland and Lithuania separating Belarus from Kaliningrad, we see a potential flashpoint. Should the situation deteriorate rapidly, especially if there's a threat to block the exclave, Russia might consider establishing control over this territory to ensure uninterrupted communications with Kaliningrad. A possible operation could unfold in phases. The initial stage might involve massive strikes on military infrastructure, including radar installations, command posts, and logistics hubs. This would likely extend to Polish facilities, given their active role in supporting the former fraternal ally and hosting NATO forces. The ground operation would involve mobile units quickly securing the corridor while maintaining air cover. NATO's response would be inevitable. Latvia and Estonia, bound by alliance obligations, would almost certainly join the conflict, expanding the combat zone significantly. Key challenges include the risk of direct confrontation with NATO, as Poland and other alliance members could deploy their contingents, dramatically escalating the conflict's scale. Even with a successful breakthrough, the corridor would remain vulnerable to counterattacks and sabotage. The situation could simultaneously escalate in the Baltic Sea, where both Russian and NATO naval forces maintain high readiness. The consequences would be severe: massive infrastructure destruction in the Baltic states, possible occupation of territories, and for Russia, drastically deteriorated EU relations, new sanctions, and risk of full-scale war with NATO. The stakes are extraordinarily high. Every move must be calculated precisely, as even a minor incident could trigger an uncontrollable escalation. The concentration of forces on both sides makes the situation particularly volatile. What do you think about the current situation in the Baltic region? Leave your point of view in the comments. In examining potential scenarios for the Baltic region, we're seeing increasingly complex military strategic calculations. The primary concern centers on securing reliable communication with Kaliningrad, a vital Russian exclave that's becoming increasingly isolated. Military analysts suggest this could require significant artillery and aviation operations, but Poland's proximity and NATO membership complicate the equation. The more comprehensive scenario involves establishing full control over the Baltic states, a move that would only be considered if Russia faces direct security threats, such as NATO's offensive systems deployment or attempts to blockade Kaliningrad. This would demand considerable military resources and unfold in stages, neutralizing forces, establishing control, and implementing new governance. Several factors make military operations challenging. The Baltic states' NATO integration and foreign military presence create multiple complexities. The limited geographical scope of operations, combined with dense civilian infrastructure, adds another dimension of difficulty. Any military action would trigger significant geopolitical shifts. The Suwalki corridor could become a flashpoint, requiring extensive forces to control. Direct confrontation with NATO forces becomes highly probable, potentially leading to unprecedented global consequences. The demilitarization concept involves eliminating NATO's military infrastructure, including neutralizing political structures deemed hostile. Controlling the Baltic coastline and port facilities would be crucial to prevent maritime supply operations. The most extensive scenario envisions complete regional transformation, requiring long-term presence and new administrative structures. Historical experience emphasizes the importance of controlling maritime communications, particularly relevant in potential confrontations. This approach would demand substantial resources and time commitment. These scenarios mirror historical patterns of regional power dynamics. The strategic importance of the Baltic Sea hasn't diminished. If anything, it's increased in our modern context. What do you think about these potential developments? Leave your answer in the comments. The Baltic region remains a critical focal point where history shapes every strategic calculation. Control over maritime routes isn't just about ships and waters, it's about long-term dominance. When your opponent gains sea access, it creates lasting challenges that echo through decades. Recent developments suggest a shifting balance of power. NATO and the EU face internal contradictions that could deepen if the Baltic states' status changes. For the alliance, this region represents more than just territory. It's a testament to their relevance and effectiveness. However, membership in these organizations doesn't guarantee security. It might actually increase the risk of being drawn into conflicts. American strategists are beginning to realize that maintaining pressure through threats could be more effective than direct action. However, when touching Russia's core interests, consequences often exceed initial calculations. The stakes are particularly high in the Baltic. The operational isolation of the Baltic region would require controlling the Suwalki corridor, the narrow land bridge connecting Lithuania and Poland. This would force Baltic states to rely solely on maritime and air routes for supplies, necessitating the establishment of an A2AD, anti-access area denial zone. In such a scenario, aerospace forces would need to target transport vessels and military aircraft, while destroying critical infrastructure for complete demilitarization. The question of deploying large ground forces remains open, considering current military commitments elsewhere. The naval component becomes increasingly crucial. The introduction of new combat units like the Project 2235D frigate Admiral Isakov significantly expands operational capabilities. This 4,500-ton vessel, stretching 135 meters with a 16-meter beam, can reach speeds of 30 knots. With a range of 4,500 nautical miles and 30-day autonomy, supported by a crew of 182 it represents a significant advancement in maritime capability. This modern warship, launched last September in St. Petersburg, honors Admiral Ivan Isakov's legacy in developing the Soviet Navy. Its deployment signals Russia's commitment to maintaining strategic balance in these waters. What do you think about the current situation in the Baltic region? Share your thoughts in the comments. In a significant development for regional naval power, Russia's navy continues its impressive modernization with new multifunctional frigates. These advanced vessels represent a quantum leap in maritime capabilities, combining strike power with defensive systems that can operate effectively across global waters. Commander-in-Chief Alexander Moiseyev has highlighted these frigates' versatility. They're not just warships, they're floating fortresses. Each vessel carries 16 state-of-the-art Zircon hypersonic missiles, alongside Caliber and Onyx systems. The Zircon missiles have proven particularly effective against modern air defense systems, as confirmed through successful sea-based trials. The Russian fleet's expansion is proceeding methodically, starting with the Admiral Gorshkov in 2018, followed by Admiral Kasatonov in 2020, and Admiral Golovko in 2023, the pattern shows steady progress. Currently, 4 more vessels of this class are under construction: Admiral Amelko, Admiral Chichagov, Admiral Yumashev, and Admiral Donskoy. What's particularly noteworthy is the strategic strengthening in the northwestern direction. The combination of new frigates and hypersonic technology creates a significant military advantage compared to Baltic states and their NATO allies. This isn't about aggression. It's about maintaining balance and protecting interests. Western rhetoric continues to paint these developments as threatening. But let's look deeper. Analysis shows this narrative serves American strategic interests more than European security needs. Some European states' anti-Russian policies effectively maintain U.S. influence while escalating regional tensions. The Baltic region finds itself caught in an increasingly complex military-political confrontation. While military capabilities grow on both sides, trust in collective security institutions erodes. Russia's consistent development of defensive and offensive capabilities, including hypersonic systems and new warship classes, reflects a commitment to maintaining strategic balance. Diplomatic channels remain open, though, and experts are discussing potential paths forward. The key lies in understanding that security isn't a zero-sum game. What do you think about these naval developments? Share your thoughts on how they might affect regional stability in the comments. The negotiation landscape in the Baltic region presents a complex web of military, economic, and diplomatic challenges. We're seeing a critical moment where the West's unwillingness to compromise meets Russia's determined stance to protect its vital interests. The situation demands careful analysis, especially considering the strategic importance of Kaliningrad and Baltic maritime routes. Moscow's military preparations shouldn't be viewed as aggression, but rather as a necessary signal to those pushing the region toward dangerous confrontation. History shows us that countries drawn into confrontations with Russia inevitably face serious consequences, while the real benefits flow to external players. The path to stability requires moving beyond the current confrontational approach that's artificially inflaming anti-Russian sentiment. Russia has clearly outlined its red lines regarding Kaliningrad and Baltic maritime communications. We're operating in an environment where all sides show readiness to defend their positions, though diplomatic solutions remain possible. Three potential scenarios are emerging if Russian strategic interests face interference. First, a limited operation to secure the Suwalki corridor. Second, comprehensive control over the Baltic states. Third, complete regional demilitarization and political transformation, establishing a Russian presence. Russia continues strengthening its northwestern military grouping systematically. This buildup reflects both defensive necessity and strategic foresight. The Baltic states must soberly assess the consequences of potential escalation. Current tensions stem largely from NATO's aggressive posturing and refusal to acknowledge Russia's security concerns. Economic factors could serve as tension reduction tools, but this requires genuine willingness to engage in dialogue based on mutual respect. The situation remains volatile, with each party's moves potentially triggering cascading effects. What's particularly concerning is how Western powers consistently dismiss Russia's legitimate security interests while pushing their own agenda in the region. This approach only increases the likelihood of uncontrolled escalation. What do you think about the current situation in the Baltic region? Leave your thoughts in the comments. The Baltic region has become a focal point of increasing military tensions, with Russia demonstrating its unwavering commitment to protecting vital interests through significant modernization of the Baltic fleet. The deployment of advanced weapons systems, including hypersonic Zircon missile complexes, sends a clear message about Moscow's resolve in defending its strategic positions. We're witnessing an alarming buildup of NATO forces along the borders, accompanied by increasingly hostile rhetoric from Baltic political circles. This dangerous dynamic is being fueled by artificially cultivated Russophobia, serving primarily the interests of external powers, particularly the United States, who appear determined to maintain tension in the region. The Baltic states have essentially become pawns in a larger geopolitical confrontation, positioning themselves at the forefront of potential conflict. Unfortunately, the true cost of such confrontational policies often becomes apparent only when peaceful resolution options have been exhausted. Russia has clearly defined its red lines regarding the security of Kaliningrad and the Baltic Sea. Any violation could trigger a decisive response following one of three scenarios, from a localized operation in the Suwalki corridor to a comprehensive demilitarization of the Baltic region. The situation remains highly volatile, with military-political confrontation risking an uncontrollable escalation. While Russia consistently strengthens its regional positions, the US and NATO continue their military containment policy, effectively pushing the region toward becoming a potential battlefield without offering real diplomatic alternatives. The key question remains: do Baltic elites understand that their security depends not on confrontation, but on finding a balance of interests? Current escalation continues, while chances for dialogue diminish. Without a sober assessment of risks, the Baltic region could become the first victim of a crisis that no participant can fully control. Stability can only be achieved through mutual recognition of interests and de-escalation. Otherwise, we're heading toward a serious crisis with unpredictable consequences for all parties involved. What do you think about the current situation in the Baltic region? Share your thoughts in